Yeah, yeah. Feel that rumble underneath your feet. Friday night coming, can't be beat. Cleats on turf, hear the whistle scream. Underneath those stadium lights, living out a dream. Billy Mazo's voice blasting, turn it loud. Cutting through the static, standing proud. Rivals on the mic, breaking down the game from coast to coast, spreading out the fame. Talking trenches, QBs with the cannon on, running backs leaving defenders charming. Who's rising up, who's got that next star shine? We break it down line by brutal line. Let's go! It's Billy Mazo's voice, nationwide sound with a passion for.
All right. We're here for the 6th episode of Villamarzo's Voice, National High School Football Podcast. Thank you to everybody who listened last week. Best show we've had yet. And, well, I mean, we got to keep it rolling, right? I mean, we got three guests with ArizonaVarsity.com. He's going to join us and talk a little bit about Grand Canyon State. That was kind of caught my eye when he tweeted it, and a little bit of information afterwards. And following up, we got Vlad Valasuk of Bama Preps. We're going to talk about all the craziness that is the Bama State. There's a lot to go, so hopefully we can give you information that we have, and then we're going to finish it out with Andrew Hart of MaineHighSchoolFootball.com. You're probably wondering, really? I mean, there's football up in the Pine Tree State? Yes, indeed. And we're going to talk all about it and give you a little intro to what's going on up there. They don't play spring football, but they do play football. So without further ado, we have Adam Beadle of ArizonaVarsity.com. I know he's been all over the place. Just kind of seeing him videos with our guy Just Chili, and he's been going around to spring showcases all around Arizona. So without any further ado, we're going to bring him on and we're going to talk about some of the happenings going on over in Arizona. Yep. Yep. All right. Well, I don't know if just missed that all, but we have 3 great guests with us tonight. Thunderstorms all around the area, so definitely impacting kind of my service right now. So I do apologize for that. But first up, we have Adam Beadle with ArizonaVarsity.com. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going on over in the Grand Canyon State. So let's bring Adam on. All right. And Adam, and I don't know, I guess my screen over here is not showing me and you, but how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I appreciate you having me on, and I always love getting to talk about some Arizona high school football.
Well, let's get to it. Obviously, all the difficulties and technical difficulties on my end, so apologies with that. But you put out a tweet that the AIA, which is Arizona's governing body for athletics, it had on their agenda that they wanted to get permission to have one of the teams after the season participate in the overtime nationals, which obviously just caught my eye because that's something that had been kind of talked about, kind of rumored throughout the country. So I thought, hey, I mean, why not look into this? And speaking to some sources, this is confirmed that they are looking to do a 14 playoff. But I mean, Arizona being one of those states that could potentially have one of their top teams take part in the playoff. I mean, for you, how much of a surprise was that?
To be honest, it wasn't a surprise at all. I think there's a lot of great talent and a lot of great players in the state of Arizona. I think Arizona is by far one of the most slept on states for high school football. We have so many great prospects that have gone on to do big things in the NFL, big things in college football. And this next season coming up, we have just tons of talented prospects on a couple of different teams. There certainly are some more teams that stick out more than others, but it's no shock to me to see that Arizona is, potentially in the running to be one of these teams in this playoff.
And for the AIA, obviously they're looking to really kind of push out the football on a national level. I mean, I believe the student athlete transferring is a little bit, well, I'm just going to use the word loose in the state. It looks like the movement is more free than probably others. And obviously on a national level, I mean, teams being able to kind of have those, I'm just going to call them super teams. I mean, because that's what it is, right? I mean, we see these teams in a lot of these kind of top states around the country. So Arizona last year, I mean, the teams were Basha, Chandler, Liberty. I mean, to you, of these top teams, I mean, who would be kind of your front runner right now if you had to say, I think they'll be that participant if the AIA decides to go in this direction?
Well, I think the immediate front runner and the obvious front runner is Basha. I mean, we're talking about a team that has over 20 kids with Division One offers on their roster. It's pretty insane. 4 out of their 5 starting offensive linemen are going Division One. Their quarterback's likely going Division One. They have Noah Roberts, who's a 4-star running back in the backfield, who's headed to Texas. They've got a wide receiver going Division One, and then you flip to the other side of the ball, and their secondary is filled with Division One athletes, and their defensive line as well boasts 2 really talented edge rushers in TK Cunningham, who just transferred in from Grayson High School in Georgia, and as well Landon Wade, who's another stud who's going to break out this season, has seen his recruitment really take off since December. And so this team, they're fast, they're physical, they're talented, they're deep out of all the things. I've never seen. They went on to win one of the most challenging playoff brackets in the country in the open division last season. And they did it with probably one of the deepest, if not the deepest roster I've ever seen out of a high school football team in the state of Arizona. So by far, Basha is that immediate front runner to potentially be that team. But there are some other teams as well, I think, that make great contention. Hamilton is another one of those. Of course, they have Roy Oliver, and Roy Oliver won just about every single major award he could last season in the state of Arizona. They have Jack Scully as quarterback as well, and tons of other Division I athletes and prospects all over the field.
Do you think there's a dark horse that could potentially kind of disrupt things when it comes to the open division and maybe sneaking into that national high school football playoff?
I think when you're looking at the teams in the open division in particular that could sneak in there, obviously you have to mention Chandler. You have to talk about Will Menzel, the number 1 quarterback in the class of 27, who's going to Oregon. The kid's a stud. They got guys like Jai Jones at wide receiver. Really a kid who's doing everything for Chandler. Some studs on the defensive side of the ball as well. Jackson Zembricki. They are really one of those dark horse teams. But, I think if you want to talk about a team that will probably make a deeper run in the open division this season, is really going to be looking to competing with its roster, is Centennial. They have a long history of winning. They have another team that's filled with Division I prospects. They have a twin brother duo in Titus and Torrin Hill, who are just going to tear it up next season. And their secondary as well. Elijah Carruthers, his brother Josiah. So there's a very, very strong bond in this team. And they also just added a very talented running back down from Tucson, Jaylee Abraham, who rushed for 33 touchdowns last season at Desert View, is coming into that team, and he immediately helps bolster their roster once he becomes eligible week 6 of the high school football season, because he will have to sit 5 games for transferring to another school. Although I have heard some things that it sounds like he could potentially play week one. He is making the move from Tucson to Peoria, so it'll all depend on how the AIA views that. So it is going to be, I think Centennial and Chandler, both of those teams could be some dark horses we can see here. And obviously, I think one other team I forgot to mention as well, Liberty. They just have a historic track record of winning, and they've got a very good head coach in Colin Thomas who just, builds these kids from the ground up and mentors them very well. And so Liberty is a team that you can never sleep on.
High school football playoff to potentially be you're going to have an Arizona team included. When are they going to make a decision on, or did they already make a decision?
I'm not sure what the official word on the decision is right now. The item on their agenda was basically to introduce discussing this, and decide whether or not they would allow a team from the state of Arizona to compete in this tournament.
In your opinion, I know you'd speak. Do you feel like this is going to be a yes or no?
I think if the AIA really wants to see the national growth of its product, which is a very amazing product, and Dr. Jim Dean, who's the executive director of the AIA, has done a fantastic job since he's taken over, really elevating the scale and the national recognition of Arizona high school football. So I think it would be super cool to see them pass this and to let the team play in this national tournament. I think it'd be really interesting and fun to watch. And I think a lot of people would agree that it would be something that would be really unique and cool for Arizona high school football and just the state of Arizona as a whole.
Now, what do you say to states that aren't thinking like the AIA, that they're being more outside the box? Because the teams I'm hearing that would possibly be participating in this, and obviously last year St. Francis Academy, the winner of the overtime nationals championship game, but rumors are potentially Bishop Gorman would be a part of this if they run the table and they do what they usually do. There's some other teams that are out there, but there's not a lot of cooperation I'm hearing when it comes to other state associations actually being open to this National High School Football Playoff like the AIA. I mean, what is your thoughts on just kind of a subjective type tournament to where Arizona, Maryland, you may have Nevada, but you're not in Florida, Georgia, potentially?
Could you repeat the question? Yeah, you're cutting out a little bit.
I don't know what's going on with the all right. Hey, I do not know what's going on. Don't know what's going on with the service here, but Adam, do you see other associations that aren't being as open-minded? What do you say to other state associations that aren't kind of thinking outside the box like the AIA when it comes to this?
I think when I look at, when I look at, I think everyone should be wanting to have the best opportunity for their kids, the best opportunity to, showcase their talents, showcase their skills, because not just in Arizona, not just in California, Florida, Texas, there are so many great and talented high school football players around the country. And I think the more eyes we can just get on not just, seeing great teams, but just recognizing, really awesome human beings and really talented athletes. Because the truth is, most of these kids that play high school football likely won't go on to play college football or may not be in the NFL. And so I think just allowing kids to have opportunities like this to go out and just have some fun at the end of the day and be able to compete is something that could be really cool. And I obviously I think that every team and every state should deserve an opportunity to prove themselves and be able to showcase their skills on the national scale.
All right. Well, I think I'll have over nationals and regarding Arizona high school football. So, Adam, thank you so much for coming on the show today. And just kind of let people know, kind of just so kind of just where they can follow your great work at. And I got what's going on. So, I mean, so that's greatly affecting my so I definitely apologize for that.
No, you're all good. I appreciate you for having me. ArizonaVarsity.com is where we do a lot of our work. A lot of great stuff on there. I'm also, I'm never off Twitter. So at the Real Beetle is my Twitter, and I'm always out there doing stuff.
Thank you so much, and Adam's amazing work. I mean, he's a great follow. He's extremely knowledgeable when it comes to high school. So I just feel that I'm not able to kind of get out all the questions I wanted to really somewhere. So definitely and we're gonna get there. All righty. And everybody watching, apologies about the thunderstorms in the area. Have definitely, I think, just taken our Wi-Fi here. So I'm just, oh, I don't know if, well, we got our next guest from Bama Preps. We have Vlad Valasuk. We're gonna talk a little bit about, well, there's a lot of happenings going on in the Yellowhammer State. So we're gonna bring him on here to kind of talk all about it. So let's go ahead and bring Vlad on.
Oh, I'm on.
All right. Well, we got Vlad on here.
I can't hear Andy.
Bama Preps. All right.
Mm-mm. I'd love to talk to you, Andy, but I can't hear you, my friend.
I do not know what's going on.
No, it's like he's not in our room here. Now, now I can hear him. Yeah.
All right, we're gonna see if this works here. This has been definitely the most trying show, but we have Vlad Valasuk here with Bama Preps. He's a content creator. He's a writer. He does it all. I mean, got to run into it at a game last year, and we kind of hit it off from there. So, Vlad, awesome to have you on the show. Apologies to you and anybody else. I do not know what's going on my laptop with the Wi-Fi. This has been crazy, but we're gonna get through this. We're gonna work through it. And well, there's a lot of news that's been coming out of Alabama this past week when it comes to high school football, and a lot of it's been centered around Pell City. I know we got some other teams that are kind of making the headlines, but I mean, this is the biggest news. And from what we know, Pell City, earlier last week, they got hit with sanctions from the Alabama High School Athletic Association. They got a 1-year suspension out of the playoffs. They got they're placed on probation. Their first-year head coach, Jake Janis, is suspended for a full season. He came over from Moody after leading them to state championship. I mean, there's a lot to unpack here, but I mean, from all those details, what else are you hearing is coming out of Pell City?
Yeah, no, Pell City situations sort of tapered off, over the past few days. There was a huge media firestorm, hundreds of thousands of people looking into it. But really, all of this started with Mary G. Montgomery, which I'm sure you've touched on in the past. I know you've touched on it with your social medias, but their head coach originally got suspended for the exact same thing. It was found that they were holding somewhat of a signing day for upcoming freshmen with kids who weren't in the school district, and their coach Zach Golson got a 1-year suspension. Mary G can't make the playoffs, and all those players have to move back to regain their eligibility. Well, the same exact thing happened here at Pell City. Coach Gaines has to serve a 1-year suspension. He was already serving a 1-game suspension due to an incident after the state title game, which they won last year. So he'll have to serve a 1-year and 1-game suspension. And Pell City ineligible for the playoffs. Obviously, this is somewhat of a landmark decision, a couple of landmark decisions that the AHSA have been making lately. And unprecedented is probably the word I could come up for it. Now that it seems like there's a witch hunt with every, single school that's ever won a game in the state now. It's created somewhat of a media firestorm, but the vibe in Pell City right now is still hopeful. Obviously, they're going to fight this. This wasn't a self-report like Mary G. Montgomery was. This was a ruling directly from the Alabama High School Athletic Association. So we'll have to see how this gets fought. Now, I will say this, Andy, these types of things usually go the way of the association in Montgomery. You can fight it in a circuit court, you can fight it in a county court, but when these sorts of decisions hit Montgomery, the AHSA is in Montgomery, they usually don't end up winning. But I'd say people are remaining hopeful for Pell City, and they're going to fight this. I know Coach Gaines personally. He's a great man. He was my coach when I played high school football. And from everything that I've ever seen with him, he does it the right way, and he makes a big impact on these kids. And I had to make sure that was said before me going forward with all this, because it's very unfortunate. It's very unfortunate, Andy.
Well, and all this, I'm just going to go with chaos. Is in Alabama. There's been some spaces had throughout the week via Twitter, X, whatever you may call it, and obviously just everybody kind of chiming in. I mean, how much do you feel like the impact has been on Alabama high school football, just when you're talking to coaches, you're talking to administrators? I mean, obviously you're using the word unprecedented. I mean, this has to be something that teams are now being made aware of, that they're going to have to kind of cross their T's, dot their I's, and make sure that they're not they're not doing anything that may catch the eye of the AHSAA.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of coaches are, and administrators and especially the fans in Pell City, just sort of want a little bit more clarification on how this whole process took forth. As you know, Andy, last year a quote unquote transfer task force was created in the state of Alabama to combat, I'll use quotes for all this, to combat the issue of transfers in the state of Alabama. I'd certainly say Jerry is still out on that. There you go. I'd certainly say Jerry's still out on that if there is an issue of transfers. And there's certainly a few coaches in the state who feel that way. Hence, this task force was made, and a lot of people seem to be of the idea that this task force took big issue with these schools. And some people say that they were, marking them down to get got. And I've spoke to some folks in the office, and they say that's not the way it went down. They say that, while the task force can make recommendations and tell the AHSAA to look into certain schools, that doesn't exactly mean that it is the task force that is the judge, jury, and executioner of these high school football programs. But like I said, yeah, man, just people want more clarity on this whole issue. It is unprecedented. The most we've seen before this is an in-season move where a coach didn't know a kid was eligible, so they have to vacate that win, or, in the worst case scenario, they have to vacate a few region wins. They end up not making the playoffs. But this is an off-season decision. And you have to remember the scale of this. Coach Gaines coming over from Moody in the off-season. No games were played with these kids on the field. This is strictly off-season activities, and the AHSAA found enough evidence, whether it was through phone records or where they were, or going to a house, whatever that process looked like. We don't know. We have no idea what that process looked like. So people just want more clarity right now, Andy.
Sounds like the word is transparency as well.
Yep.
Just wanting to know kind of more exactly what all went into this. And obviously, whenever a team with high aspirations, I know I had people on Twitter kind of saying, when did Pell City become major when it came to a major program being hit with sanctions? And I feel like somebody answered that very well by saying when Jake Gaines went there, it became a major program. And
Right.
I think that's exactly what ended up happening here. And you already said it, they're not the only program that got hit with sanctions. Mary G. Montgomery was another one as well. They obviously lose Zach Golson for the entire year due to that, along with very, very similar sanctions that were brought down to them by the AHSAA. But I mean, do you feel like the association's kind of done here with their, let's just say, the penalty sweeping that's going on, or do you think there's more down the line?
Yeah. No, well, you could never say for certain, and I certainly won't throw my hat in the ring in any sort of speculation, and certainly not naming schools, but the precedent has been set for these types of rulings. So whether it's this year or maybe over the next offseason, I certainly wouldn't be surprised if we do see a few other schools get brought down. But what we don't want to do is create a witch hunt on social media for every single school that maybe gets a kid or two, because I'll say this: just because you get a transfer doesn't mean you're cheating. And for 99% of transfers coming in, well, maybe a little less than that, but we'll go with 99. For 99% of transfers coming in, it's a family moving, and it's a familial decision, whether it is academics or even if it's athletics. Sort of where you draw that line has been the sticking point of every association across our 50 states. And each one has a little different line which they're willing to cross before it becomes a problem. In the state of Alabama, that's contact with before they go to another school, or whether it's a midseason transfer. The way it works in Alabama is you have to make a bona fide move. I use quotes again, bona fide move. In order to make that transfer possible, then you have to sit out a certain window of time, and that's really it. That's all there is in the state. So we'll see where they draw that line with a few other schools, but like I said, I certainly wouldn't be surprised if we see a few more.
Well, we got to switch over from the obviously one unprecedented, I'll say scenario or scenarios to now there's the Choose Act that is under review, and from what I understand, it hasn't passed yet. But and I'm fully just kind of informed on exactly how this would impact the state of Alabama. But I know in talking to you and others around the state, I mean, this obviously is going to be a big deal. Kind of explain just a little bit of what you know and how this would impact just Alabama high school football.
Oh,
in
out of
general.
the 105, 106 years that we've had an association in the state of Alabama, this is the single biggest piece of legislation that has hit the state. I can say that firmly.
Wow.
The Choose Act was created in order to pull funding from private schools, from public schools, and give $7,000 towards a public or a private school tuition. So you're going from the public to the private, and Governor Kay Ivey herself was the one who wrote off on this piece of legislation. What this caused was some athletes and their families moving from public to private without making that bona fide move. So what the AHSA ruled is that this was used as athletic scholarship, which is not allowed to be used for transfers, meaning that the school had some influence in giving money to that parent and their that kid and their family in order for them to go play athletics at another school. So the AHSA ruled this as scholarship money. Therefore, they have to sit out a year, be ineligible before they're eligible to play high school athletics. Well, the state government didn't like that. This is a program that they're trying to push right now. They're trying to get as many kids out of public school, bring them over into a private school as possible. And in turn, this made the state of Alabama file a lawsuit, and eventually, gosh, what was it? It was a I think it was it's exactly what it was. It was a restraining order against the AHSAA. So what ended up happening was these kids were now eligible to play for that athletic season, and the AHSA just split the public and the private schools, meaning that now we have a private playoff and a public playoff in order for them to be able to keep their rule intact. So overall, this has caused a lot of strife. Like I said, this is the biggest ruling the biggest rule change that we've seen here in the state of Alabama, and for some time. And it's unfortunate that we won't have combined playoffs anymore, but I can understand both point of views when it comes to this kind of stuff.
I don't know if you can hear me. But if you can still hear me, let me know.
I can hear you a little bit.
Yep. Alrighty. Well, I did nothing in that entire period to really change it. So it tells you just the level of difficulties going through here. That it's not.
That's okay. We'll turn this into Valasuk's voice. I can do the show from here. Well, I mean, this is my time to promote the state of Alabama. Hello, viewers of the show. As you know, Andy is going through the thunderstorm of the century apparently right now, and his audio is cutting out a little bit. So this is my time to promote the great state of Alabama, one that we personally believe is a top 5 football state. But yeah, no, that's that's really all I got. Is he tries to come back in. I guess I could expound a little bit more on the Choose Act, but yeah, no, it was a big deal for us across the state, and we're certainly looking forward to see what the playoffs look like now. You can still schedule private schools as non-region opponents, but everything with region opponents now has just turned straight into a split playoff system. So you've got Class A and Class AA, and then you've got 6A down to 1A now from the 7A to 1A that we used to have, with around 50 or 55 or so school split. And there's Andy.
All right, people. I don't know with this action here. Vlad, definitely appreciate you coming on and kind of talking about the key issues and points that are going on in Alabama high school football. Let a lot of great work over in the Yellowhammer State.
Well, I think he cut out again, but yeah, no, you can find us at Bama Preps, BAMAPREPS, just like it is on the hat here on Instagram. That's our main platform. You could find us on X, formerly Twitter, at Bama Preps, BAMAPREPS FB. That's Bama Preps FB. And you can find us on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Bama Preps. And thank you. Thank y'all for having me. I know Andy's trying to get it back going here, but hopefully he can have me on the show when the weather clears up a little bit.
All right. Well, we're gonna try to finish this off. This has been obviously a very difficult one, just because weather has been crazy along the West Coast here. I'm looking at my computer. It shows I got full bars, so we're gonna try to get Andrew Hart here from MaineHighSchoolFootball.com. We're gonna talk a little bit about the Pine Tree State and football up there. I know some of you are like, Maine? Well, yeah, there is football played up there, and I've talked to Andrew quite a bit here is in the last year, and we definitely have learned a lot when it comes to Maine and just high school football up there. So without further ado, we're going to bring Andrew on from MaineHighSchoolFootball.com. All right, Andrew. Hopefully, this segment we can be somewhat. I might be here the whole time, but who knows? I'm looking at my bars here. It shows I got 5 bars, but I think Mother Nature is not cooperating here in Florida. But I'm sure the weather up your way is not as uncooperative.
Definitely isn't up here, although we got rain. I'm not sure if you're having the storm of the century down there or not. That is always a rough thing. When technology works, it's great. When technology does not work, nothing is more frustrating.
And frustrating it has been this entire show, but I'm hoping me and you can actually go ahead and talk high school football without any glitches, but I'm just going to cross my fingers here. Well, Andrew, obviously in Maine, they don't play spring football. That's not a thing. And up there, I mean, during this time, kids are playing other sports like baseball, lacrosse. Just, I mean, for one to kind of understand why doesn't spring football kind of take over at all? I mean, kind of talk about how important other sports are when it comes to just the springtime and why you probably don't see spring football maybe ever happening in Maine.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Maine is a big state on tradition, and one of those things that Maine has a very strong belief in is your separations between the different sports seasons, between fall, between winter, and then into spring. And you don't see a lot of overlap on that, which may very well be why, when it came to football, there's never really much of a push to want to say have we want to see football, played in the springtime like you do in other states down in the southern part of the country, where you see Florida, spring football taking place, Texas and whatnot. I mean, it's not really anything I've ever heard pushed before the Maine Principals Association, the athletic overseeing body here in the state of Maine. One of their big beliefs is making sure that students have that opportunity to be able to play one sport going into the next sport, going into the next sport. No, I don't see it really happening so much, and I don't see as much of a strong push. Now, that's not to say that there isn't camps that are going on. Several of the coaches, big one coming out of BL Lippert, doing one through Maine Passing Academy, or something to basically passing school. I mean, there's some coaches out there that are trying to take advantage of it for those kids that do want to be able to play, at least, hone their craft in the spring before they go into the off season.
Well, and the off season for Maine is not so much about kind of getting into anything like with the spring, putting on a helmet or anything like that. But the big event that I hear about, and you've told me plenty about it, and I would love to come and actually see the game, is the Lobster Bowl, and that is Maine's All-Star game, and that takes place in July. Kind of talk about that, just kind of being the off-season spectacle when it comes to Maine high school football, and just how important is that game to the seniors that just participated in the 2025 season, and what kind of way this is to cap their high school football careers?
So you see in Maine that going into July, going into the winter seasons, the Chorus Shriners will put on as one of their big fundraiser events the Maine Shrine Lobster Bowl, which will pluck out about 120 seniors. This is not a sophomore program or a junior. This is strictly for seniors that are playing. They're going to be playing, for most of them, their last high school football game. So they're going to come in, they're going to get their nod, and then in addition to this being an all-star game of sorts, what this really boils down to is it's a fundraiser for the Shriners Hospital. The game itself, the event, the fundraising, and in order for a player to take part, he's got to be able to meet a certain fundraising threshold. And, one of the things the Shriners will do is work with technology to be able to allow online donations. You'll see a lot of times players will get work in their community. As a matter of fact, I was looking at one earlier for the city that I'm in here, down here in South Portland, where they're going to have a breakfast over at one of the members' lodges, and they're going to utilize that as a fundraiser. So you see a lot of these sort of things, and everybody wants to be able to play, but one of the biggest cheers is seeing the Shriners bring in their designated member there from the hospital and kind of, say, hey, this is ultimately what the fundraisers are going towards. So while it's great to be able to play football under the sun in Lewiston, at the end of the day, the important thing is it's an amazing event, an amazing fundraising opportunity that may very well not happen. Now, Maine's not alone in that regard. Our next door neighbors in Vermont and New Hampshire, they have what's called the Maine Shrine, the Maple maple syrup shrine game where they will have some of their best from Vermont and New Hampshire playing against each other as well. I'm trying to think. I believe Kansas has one. I got to imagine there's other places in the country that also have that sort of thing. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's much more than just an all-star game, I guess, at the end of the day.
What kind of environment is it? Because from the photos I see, I mean, it looks like it's a very well attended All Star game. And I guess to my reason I sound surprised at just kind of the attendance of this game is because when I go to All Star games in Florida, I mean, it's a very sparse crowd. It's not, this is not a packed atmosphere when kids play in an All Star game. So I've seen the photos. I mean, the Lobster Bowl looks like, I mean, kind of we'll just say it's a crowded event. It looks like very well attended, and people come to watch these kids play their final high school football game.
Oh, it's, you know, you can see on a very good day, you know, if the sun's good and it's not too hot outside, you can see anywhere from about 4,000 to 5,000 people going in. Now, it's a lot of the family crowd, a lot of the family environment. When you've got 120 players, students taking part, they're going to bring their families along. There are some teams that will be in support. You will see an incoming class that will be dressed out in their jerseys. They'll be sitting, you know, there to cheer on their fellow student. The pregame, they'll basically go through each and every person taking part, and you can hear all the various sections. You know, there's Herman's fan base that's cheering on their player. Down there, there's Biddeford, they're cheering on their player. Portland, Holton, you know, all these different communities are out there, and that what really adds to it. So at the end of the day, not a lot of people look at it as some sort of, you know, hey, we're just using this as a we want to be seen sort of an event. You know, they all know
Right.
that, hey, this is that one last chance under the sun to be able to throw the pigskin around and be able to play. But in addition to the game, they're also a week-long camp that they all get a chance to take part in, where the coaches that are selected for that will also be able to help give some instruction. Communities will donate their time, money, events to be able to let the kids go out in the evening, enjoy themselves in the summer, but also be able to represent the community. They will have a chance to kind of work with one of the area hospitals for it. So it's grown into such an amazing program. What the Main Shriners event president Joe Hersom has been able to put together for this in the years that I've known him being able to do it. It's a credit to the region. It's one of Maine football's undiscovered gems that, frankly, in my opinion, deserves so much more to be advertised about and be able to say, hey, you know, people may not know that us up here in Maine play football, but this is one of the great things that if I need to explain, you know, what's a tentpole event for our football season, I can point right at our Lobster Bowl and I can say, yeah, this is the curtain closer for seniors. And then because it's in the middle of July, we can also point to that saying, this is the curtain raiser that gets everybody ready for the upcoming high school football season that'll be beginning in August.
And, you know, I wanted to really go to this game last year, but just hearing all that and hearing that there could be a nice, I mean, on a good day, let's hope that, you know, in July that it's not too hot. It's tolerable. I mean, I'd love to see 4,000 or 5,000 people at an all-star game in mid-July. That would be awesome. I'm going to do what I can to try to be there this time around. It sounds like a really cool event. And anytime it's for a great cause, it makes it that much better. So
absolutely.
Something
and
that
one of the nice features that they're doing this year to kind of throw a plug out is they have involved Maine Public Broadcasting Network in on, because normally Munzing Media, which does an amazing job in the Gardner area, which is kind of a little bit in the Augusta area for those who aren't familiar with Maine geography, they do an amazing job in their community of doing live stream events, both at their local high school, youth events, community college. They've been, you know, brought in to help out. Mr. Munzing himself is going to be involved on this, but they were also able to convince Maine Public Broadcasting to be able to bring in their resources. Normally, their involvement, they serve as the broadcaster for the Maine State High School basketball, which in the state of Maine is the king sport. You know, you look at Texas is football, Minnesota is ice hockey. You can say Indiana is basketball as well. Maine would also lay claim to the big event of the whole year would be basketball. So they were able to talk to the folks there and be able to say, hey, can you bring your staff? Can you bring your equipment? We would love to be able to work. And because it's a charity event, there's no profit margin. There's no profit drive, no looking at profit margins to be able to say, this is why we want them to come in. So ultimately, everybody recognizes that this is just, it's not just the broadcasting, it's also being able to expose the event to a wider audience.
Well, and a great event that it is. I feel like just being there in person, maybe getting some video clips up via Twitter and Instagram, just amplifying it that much more would help bring some, I'll say, sorely needed recognition from a national level, just to kind of let people in on seeing that, yeah, there is high school football still being played well into July, but it's not a game between high schools. It's between high school seniors that are closing out their careers, and what a current closer it is for what they do. And, something I also want to touch on in Maine, and maybe as much we're going to talk about this, or I feel like you're going to touch on it. I think this might be our last topic, but 8-man football. 8-man football has become a big thing in Maine. And I know you're a big proponent of this level of it. I know a lot of states are kind of looking at pilot programs because declining numbers is a thing. It's happening around the country, whether the NFHS numbers kind of say otherwise, but I do kind of notice around the country that programs are having problems having as many players within their programs. But 8-man has become kind of a solution for programs that aren't able to have rosters that can have 11-man teams. And I thought no one's better than you to kind of talk about how 8-man's been so successful in Maine and really keeping the game alive for schools that can't play 11-man.
It can't be understated enough how much the advent of 8-man football in 2019 just did so much for the state. Going into the season or coming into the years before that, there was some programs that were struggling with numbers. They couldn't do it. Maine being a fairly rural state, there's a legacy, a long-standing tradition for a lot of the old mill towns, a lot of the old oceanside port towns that were able to sustain programs, but due to changing demographics, due to changing socioeconomic factors, a lot of communities have been on the downcline that had traditionally had strong, smaller school support. So initially, what the Maine Principals Association talked about doing was creating at the time, there were 4 classes, Class A through Class D. So what they decided is, well, some of these programs, they're struggling with numbers, so let's put them together with other programs that are also struggling. Let's put them in the same classification. So while it wasn't given a state championship designation, they said, let's call it the Class E development class. The first time around, Booth Bay, which is, a seaside town, struggling for the most part with numbers. They actually had they had a good solid turnaround. And, this is a program that was sub 20 when they were playing 11-man football. Now, I know there's some out there that'll say, oh, that's nothing. That's no big deal. We play 18 kids and I'll run uphill both ways and all those sort of things. But in Maine, where soccer has a far longer legacy of sports and getting involvement, and because they're oftentimes competing for the same sort of kids at these smaller schools in Maine, football oftentimes was struggling to get those numbers. So Dean Plant, the head coach for Old Orchard Beach, was one of the people that was willing to go to bat with the MPA to say, hey, look, this is truly needed. We need to be able to bring this together. So to his credit, he was able to find 9 other schools that were willing to get on board. And the success of that first year ended up leading to, well, after the after the pandemic, of course. But if I look over at the map, you're looking at, and somebody's going to probably correct me after the fact of it. They went from 10 schools, I believe, up to 24 in in a 2-year turnaround time, because a lot of these other schools that were smaller classification, Class D, or larger school class designations, but just couldn't get the numbers, were realizing, hey, this 8-man football isn't a big boogeyman. It can work. It's different, but different's not bad. So you saw this flux of schools coming in. And in Maine, unlike other states, in most states, there's a hard cap on the enrollment in a school to be able to play. Texas, 6-man football, I believe theirs is like 110 kids. Minnesota, I know Minnesota and the Dakotas, they play 9-man. And usually you're going to see an enrollment in there of under 200 for them to play. Kansas, Nebraska, Missouri, Montana, Utah, Colorado, all these other states out in the Midwest, out in the mountains, realize that, hey, we want to be able to keep kids playing football. We want to be able to attract them. Football's a great sport. It has great opportunities for learning that a lot of kids, in my opinion, I think they greatly benefit from. I know I did growing up. So the ability to be keeping kids in football was a driving factor. Dean Plant, one of the folks there at Old Orchard Beach, recognized that. And he wasn't the only one, but he's had the most success. He's gotten the best community buy-in for his area. He's been able to find coaches that didn't look at 8-man as just, oh, we're just biding our time till we can get bigger numbers and moving up. Granted, Maine has accepted the fact that there's 2 ways to look at 8-man. Rebuilding numbers in hopes of going to 11-man. We're seeing that right now in Camden Hills. They were a struggling program, went down to 8-man football. Chris Christie, who had taken over for them, ended up having an amazing turnaround time, gave them their very first state championship this past fall, and was able to get numbers infused into the program they've never, ever seen. And this is a first-time program that never had football previously. Another one I'll point at is Mount Ararat up in Topsom. They had traditionally struggled for the longest time trying to get numbers in. They had played in the larger classifications and would just get the snot kicked out of them time and time again. They had struggles with continuity amongst their coaches. Frank True comes in on board, realizes, hey, we got to start looking at this, or else we can just kiss football in this area goodbye. And he did. Now, they are the largest school playing 8-man football. They've gotten an enrollment of about, I think, between 700 and 800. I forget what exactly. But they're only getting about 20 kids going out for it. But the program, the kids, that community had bought into it from day one and have stayed with it in day one. Maybe one day they go back to 11-man. Who knows? But these are some of the great stories of programs that I can point to that said they were able to keep football existing when it was sure to go away in time. Maine has 79 programs right now. I would say maybe you might find one program kind of struggling here or there, but those that are in 8-man those in 8-man all have significantly serious prognosis for good things going into the future.
Well, and it's great to hear that 8-man has been able to kind of keep these programs going and not having to kind of go full pause on, not being able to continue having a football program. And I mean, hey, if anyone can agree with you that you got to find a way to keep it going, keep high school football alive and well in the state of Maine and, everywhere to that matter. I know we kind of talked about off camera, just a state like Vermont obviously could really take advantage of having 8-man as a part of their, athletics. So, I mean, I think they can definitely learn from the state and seeing that, yes, you may have a rural state, but there is a way to maintain having a football program without being 11-man and being able to kind of move forward.
And that's, at the end of the day, it's all the basic tenets that go into football. You're passing, you're running, you're blocking, you're tackling. Just because it's only 8 kids on the field, 16 in total, does not take away from being treated, football like anywhere else. You go down to Texas and you say 6-man ain't nothing. They ain't even real football. I can guarantee each and every one of those school programs down there would be hollering at them, whether it's Strawn, whether it's Richland Springs, whether it's Balmorea. I'm trying to think of some of the 6-man programs that come to mind. Or I can even point at those in the Dakotas. I can look at those in Montana. I can look at those in Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, all these other ones. Heck, in the last 10 years, we've seen 8-man start to finally make inroads east. The first one to start was Michigan. New York then tried. Michigan was able to get the better buy-in because they've got so many more rural areas in the state, both in the Upper Peninsula and elsewhere, that have agreed. New York has kind of struggled. The last article I had read on them maybe a year or so ago was realizing that some of these programs were either able to rebuild or just decided we're just going to go co-op. And I've seen all the same sort of things happen in Maine. When 8-man came in, a lot of the sentiment amongst the old guard was just co-op, just co-op. So who cares about your local community program? Just merge in with somebody else. For some of them, it might work. For others, it didn't. For instance, Greeley, which is in Cumberland, kind of a little bit north of Portland, they had struggled with keeping their numbers intact. They ended up merging with their nearby rival in Falmouth, and they said, we're going to go to 11-man. A couple years went by. The community said, look, football's great, but we can support what we're doing. Caleb King comes in, gets involved with the Greeley Rangers program, gets them jump-started. They go into 8-man. Their first year was a struggle. They went 0-7. The very next year, they rebound. They go to the 8-man large school class state championship. They lost 28-0, but for a program that had just been reinstituted the year prior is an amazing, phenomenal thing. The next year, they go back to state. They go 7-1, run the table, and win the state championship with good numbers. The community realized, wow, he's making football fun. He's getting the passion built back in for Ranger football. Rangers lead the way football. They end up saying, look, we've got enough numbers. We're going to go back to 11-man. They go to 11-man. They were the team of the year, in my opinion. Well, all right. Westbrook is a compelling story as well, but I would say Greeley going from 8-man state championships, winning that, going to 11-man, running the table, going 11-0, and winning the Class C state championship is an amazing story in and of itself. So it's all part of that great ability for 8-man football, even slightly smaller, the kind of variation you don't see on TV except Arena, which is nowhere close, by the way. It's all great, amazing things that is a credit to what happens when people think out of the box and realize that different is not always bad. Different can be just as good.
Well, absolutely. And there's going to be plenty of more great stories to come out of the state as we approach the 2026 season. I hope I'm able to get over to the Lobster Bowl and meet you in person and be a part of that. And Andrew, I thank you for coming on the show here this evening. And you were I got to give you, I guess, a prize or something. We made it without me disappearing, without any sound issues. So I'm going to go ahead and just let people know where they can follow you at. And just Andrew does tremendous work and coverage of Maine high school football. I follow his stuff all on Facebook, and he does a great job.
Thank you, Andy. You can follow us at our website, mainhighschoolfootball.com, which I use for, showcasing our rankings, our schedules that happen, stories coming up, our awards that we do. You can also follow us on Facebook as well at the same name, mainhighschoolfootball.com. Be careful. The scammers are out there, so you're going to want to make sure that you follow the real Maine high school football page. Just look for it in the About section, and you'll see my address, and that's the one.
Hey, and if you can't see that, he's got over 17,000 followers. So that to me it tells you he's an authoritative voice. He's somebody that is at these events. I enjoy watching his videos throughout the season. Very insightful, and he knows a lot about national high school football as well. But if me and Andrew talks, we may end up talking as long as we did on the phone the other day. And I think we almost closed in on 3 hours when we spoke. So, Andrew, thank you so much once again for joining us, and we'll definitely have you back on.
I'm looking forward to it. You have a great rest of your weekend, Andy.
Hey, you as well. And that is our final guest. And that one, as the weather clears out, we're able to kind of actually end the show with no technical difficulties. So do apologize to our viewers for earlier here today, but just Mother Nature. I don't know what else to say. But we're going to close this out. This is the 6th episode of Villamarzo's Voice. Thank you, Andrew. All right. Well, that concludes our 6th episode of Villamarzo's Voice, and join us next week. I'm going to promise that we won't have the technical difficulties that we're having this week. Thankfully, that last segment, Mother Nature kind of cleared out, but we're going to have some great guests next week. You got Nick Wilson with USA Today. He's the Florida recruiting writer. He's out of the Fort Myers area. He's been all around. We're going to catch up with him and talk a little bit about spring high school football now that it's closed up here in the Sunshine State. We're going to have Chris Battle, the head coach of the Barrow Whalers. And if you've heard of them or you haven't heard of them, I mean, they play in the most northern part of the United States. They play on that blue field that you've probably seen, that iconic photo. Yes, we're going to have him on all the way from Alaska. He's going to join us, and you just heard thunder. It's still, I guess the weather's still out there, and we'll introduce the full year by tomorrow. For Andy Villamarzo Rivals, thank you for joining us, and same time, same place next week.
Yeah, feel that rumble underneath your feet. Friday night coming, can't be beat. Cleats on turf, hear the whistle scream. Underneath those stadium lights, living out a dream. Villamarzo's voice blasting, turn it loud. Cutting through the static, standing proud. Rivals on the mic, breaking down the game from coast to coast, spreading out the fame. Talking trenches, QBs with the cannon on, running backs leaving defenders charming. Who's rising up, who's got that next star shine? We break it down line by brutal line. Let's go! It's Villamarzo's voice, nationwide sound with a passion for Friday. Yeah, feel that rumble underneath your feet. Friday night coming, can't be beat. Cleats on turf, hear the whistle scream. Underneath those stadium lights, living out a dream. Villamarzo's voice blasting, turn it loud. Cutting through the static, standing proud. Rivals on the mic, breaking down the game from coast to coast, spreading out the fame. Talking trenches, QBs with the cannon on, running backs leaving defenders charming. Who's rising up, who's got that next star shine? We break it down line by brutal